I'm David DeChant again, Reverend David DeChant, talking with my friend and mentor, master woodworker and seafood, George Berry.
Mentor?
Yeah, you're a encyclopedia of woodworking and spiritual knowledge, I find. And boy, if I need a question about rabbit joints, I'll come right down. You're my go-to. But up until now, we have talked about woodworking and RIT and your adventure on the boat. And when we last left off, you had said, but then I had a stroke, a big one. And so I want to talk about the bar fight you had and how that possibly led to the life change you went through. And maybe something about Morehouse, because I think that's important to the history of George Berry.
Well, it's, I came back from New York because I wanted to go to technical school. I wanted to go to Atlanta Area Tech at night and sweep up in a wood shop during the day. So that's what I did. And I came back and I wanted to be able to get a job in a cabinet shop. And I didn't know the names of all the equipment. You can't get a job in a cabinet shop if you don't know the names of the woodworking equipment.
It's tough.
So I had to go to Atlanta Area Tech at night and sweep up during the day. And it gave me, I worked for a display company. They had 6 cabinet makers working for them. And I'd look over their shoulder and then that job ran out. It was just moving from across town. So about 6 or 7 weeks, that job was over. And I got laid off. And I had seen a cabinet shop close to the park, Piedmont Park here in Atlanta. And I got laid off. And the same day, I walked over to that cabinet shop and walked in and said, "Do you need a cabinet maker?" And the guy said, "Are you a cabinet maker?" And I said, "No, but I'm more than a helper." I worked for him for a year, and then I went to Georgia State, and I got a degree in interior design. And I came back from New York to open my own shop in Atlanta. And I worked in that shop for, I guess, 20 years.
Where was it?
It was on Edgewood Avenue. It was...
like where Thumbs Up or Amaza is now, or one of those two, right?
a couple blocks east of that. Oh. It was the corner of Waddell Street and Edgewood Avenue.
Oh, okay.
And I was in that shop, and it was very cheap rent, and that's why I got it. And I lived in the shop. They say it's not good to live in your shop because people will wake up and not be fully awake and start back on a project and get hurt.
Huh.
So they say it's not good to live in your shop, but I have always lived in my shop. I couldn't afford a shop and a house.
Uh-huh.
Now, at the time when I moved into the shop on Edgewood, I did see a house for sale right across the street. And I told the guy if he ever sold that house to give me first crack at it, that I'd pay him whatever it was appraised at. Uh-huh. And I saw the sign go up, and he left, and I went across the street and pulled the sign up. And when he got back, I said, "Hey, look, you got to give me first choice at this. What's the appraisal on the house? I'll give you the appraised price. What is it?" So I bought that house. Mm-hmm. So I lived across the street for some time in that shop. And
Big improvement.
And I worked on that house and fixed it up. It was a duplex. And it was upstairs and downstairs. I lived downstairs, and I rented the upstairs out for the mortgage payment. Mm-hmm. So I got a taste of blood then.
This is how Atlanta operates.
Yes, that was exactly what I needed to do because thought, this is great. Everybody is working for their mortgage payment. You got to pay the mortgage. And I was renting a place out. So I put a apartment in the bottom of my parents' house. And I told my father after the apartment was done, I said, here's a key to the back door now, and rent that apartment out for your mortgage payment. And us Barrys will have this mortgage thing beat. And that helped him a lot in the rest of his life. So, we want to start talking about the stroke?
Absolutely. Let me ask you this, just maybe this will launch you in that direction. Is it fair to say at the time of the stroke that you were a big drinker?
That would be an understatement. It wouldn't be fair because it would be an understatement.
I see.
I was a big drinker all the way through graduate school. I was a beer drinker, and I smoked cigarettes. I smoked 2 packs of Marlboros every day.
Gross.
And drank 2 cases of beer every weekend.
Ugh, Lord.
Back then, the beer was Pabst Blue Ribbon. And the cheapest way to drink the beer at that time was you bought a case of Pabst Blue Ribbon in the gooseneck bottles. And keep the empty bottles. And then when you go back, you deliver them a case of empty bottles, and you get cheaper beer.
You had a system.
I had a system. I had 2 cases. I'd stop Friday afternoon after school, get 2 cases of beer, and take them home. And by Sunday, they would be all gone, and we'd have to go to the bootlegger. They didn't sell beer on Sunday back then. So we had to go to the bootlegger and buy a beer. Now, I had help. I had help drinking that beer.
Some friends.
But I was a big drunk at the time. I never missed work, but I went to work feeling pretty bad.
Sure. I know those days.
So the beer and the cigarettes were slowly killing me. And I was partying late at night. I would go to bars that I knew were late night bars. We'd close the bar out, and then we'd go to a restaurant that opened up early that served beer. So we just kept drinking, and then I'd just go home and pass out. Or if I didn't pass out earlier. So I was partying a lot and drinking a lot of beer and smoking a lot of cigarettes, and I got sick with the flu. And my girlfriend at the time, Carolyn, said, "This is pretty bad. We're going to take you to the doctor." And we went to her doctor, Dr. Rossi, and she said, "Well, it's a virus. There's not much we can do for a virus. So go home, drink lots of liquids, and if you don't feel any better in the morning, come back." So I went home. I coughed all night, a dry cough, coughed all night. My girlfriend kept rubbing Vicks Vapor Rub on my chest. Since then, I can't stand it. So we went back to the doctor the next day, and I sat down in the chair and I said, "Dr. Rossi, I don't think I've ever felt this bad in my life. This is bad." And she said, "Well, why don't we just check you into the hospital so we can watch you and see if it gets any worse?" So I left, and she took me to the hospital. My girlfriend took me to the hospital, and I got out of the car at the hospital, and two orderlies in white coats were pushing a wheelchair out to the hospital. I said, well, geez, that's a wheelchair. Somebody must be bad hurt. And I got up from the car, and the orderlies rolled the wheelchair over to me. And I laughed, and I said, I don't need a wheelchair. And I took one step, and I thought, that wheelchair looks more inviting now. So I sat in the wheelchair. They took me into a private room, and I sat on the bed, and Dr. Rossi came into the hospital room, and that's the last thing I remember.
Huh.
I woke up 19 days later. I had been on a ventilator for 19 days, unconscious, in intensive care.
Oy.
Dr. Rossi called my parents that same day and said, he won't make it through the night.
Oy.
If you want to see him, come down now. And the parents came down, and they brought the priest with them. I got last rites. I didn't see him. I was unconscious. And so I barely made it through that night. And Dr. Rossi did the same thing, and my parents did the same thing again. He won't make it through this night, the next night. And priest came down and gave me last rites again. And I made it through that night. And then she said, well, he's a fighter. He will, he might pull through. So I woke up 19 days later. I couldn't move my left arm. I couldn't move my left leg. I couldn't see anything left of the center line. I remember opening my eyes, and I saw a hospital light, and I remember thinking, I don't like that light. That's a terrible design choice. I got a degree in interior design. That's a terrible design choice. That light is unbelievably bad. And that was because at the time I was only seeing half of it. Mm-hmm. So I remember a neurologist came into the room, and he was, checking me out, and he said, look up at that clock and tell me what time it is. And I looked up at the clock, and I couldn't read the time. It was a schoolhouse clock. It was a foot in diameter, and it had big hands on it, and I just couldn't read it. I didn't know what time. I was looking right at it. I just couldn't read it. And the neurologist had a knowing grin on his face and said, take this piece of paper and gave me a pencil. He said, now draw a clock face and draw 8 o'clock on that clock face. And I tried to do it, and I drew a big oval. And I put 1 at the top, and did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 12 at the bottom. It was all on one side. Now, I didn't know it. I was half blind at the time, so what I did was I was looking at the piece of paper, and I could see half of the piece of paper, and I tried to keep the clock on that half. So I just drew a big half of an oval and drew all the numbers so I could see all the numbers, and I got lost trying to put the hands in the clock. And so he took the piece of paper away, and he said, I'm going to say 3 words to you, and I want you to say them back to me. And he said something like baseball, cop car, and backyard. And by the time he said backyard, I couldn't remember the first word. Couldn't do it. So that was it. He left the room, and he made the report to the doctor. And it turns out I had a stroke when I was on the ventilator. And it was a pretty massive stroke. But the paralysis, I can remember saying to myself, I refuse to be paralyzed. I'm not going to be paralyzed. And I could move my left arm the next day. I could move my left foot a little bit. Within a week, I could move my arm, my fingers, my leg, everything. My leg was harder to come back because I would walk one step at a time and put my foot out and drag the leg behind me. And I had to go to physical therapy, and I called it physical terrorism. And I finally was able, I was finally able to go home. And Dr. Rossi said, "You're still a sick guy, and I'm not letting you out of here until you can remember my name." And so I borrowed an ink pen from somebody and wrote her name down on my hand, and the palm of my hand, and the back of my hand. Because next time she came in the room, I said, "Hospitals are for sick people. I'm not sick." So she said, "Well, I hear you." So a few more days of physical therapy, and I was released from the hospital. Still dragging my leg behind me. And so I went to my girlfriend's apartment, and she nursed me. And it took about 2 months before I didn't wear more than a bathrobe for those 2 months. And after 2 months, there was a big celebration because I could walk around the block. And I would throw a rubber ball against the wall and catch it with my left hand. So on my right hand was good. I could see fine, and my right hand was good and strong, and left leg was okay. But I walked around the block, and that was for celebration, with a bathrobe on. Walked around the block, and that was a big celebration. And gradually, over the next 2 years, the neurologist saw me, and I would go to see him, and he said, "Well, George, you're the same person you were before. You're just not as smart as you used to be." And I said, "Well, gee, thanks, Doc." He said, "Well, I have every reason to think that you will continue to recover. You will get more and more of your brain power back for the first 3 years. You're going to get back all you're going to get back in 3 years. When you have a stroke, some brain cells are unaffected. Some brain cells get sick, and some brain cells die. The brain cells that are dead are never coming back. The brain cells that got sick will recover. So you're going to keep getting better for 3 years. After that, that's all you're going to get back." So I kept going back to Dr. Rossi. The neurologist says, "I can't help you anymore." And go back to Dr. Rossi every now and then, every 3 or 4 months, I'd go back to her. And she would say, I was complaining to her at one time that the brain deficit and the eye deficit was just too much to handle at one time. If I just had one or the other, I could handle it. I could compensate for it. But both at the same time is too much. And she said, well, have you given any thought to what you could do if you couldn't work wood anymore? If you couldn't design and build furniture, what could you do? Before then, I was never frightened. I was never worried. If you have a short-term memory loss where you can't remember 3 words in a row, you can't worry. You can't remember it long enough to worry. So I was fine. I wasn't worried. But when she said that, that's the first time it scared me. That the stroke scared me. That I thought, and I answered her, I could take up tickets in a movie theater. So I kept going back to her and kept getting a little better, and she said, well, what do you think we should do? And I thought, I'm not getting all that much better that quick. I think I should go get an IQ test. I should reduce all of my problems to a number and then work on that number. So she scheduled a psychologist to give me an IQ test. And I went out and took that. And the test lasted about 3 hours. I mean, it was even put together blocks, put together puzzles, put the square block into the square hole, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then it was quizzes and how I could remember things, which I couldn't remember much at all. But he finally got an IQ test. And the IQ test at that time were good enough to tell the IQ on each side of the brain. So I had an IQ on one side of the brain, which was 129, and an IQ on the other side of the brain, which was 60. I knew from my time in the Army, you get an IQ test when you join the Army. They refuse to say it is an IQ test.
Right.
But it is. And the lowest you can score on that test is 60. And there's only one job in the Army that you can have with an IQ of 60.
Which is?
Military policeman. That was it. So I went to a psychologist every week, and she would give me tests, little IQ type test. One of the tests would be, here's a page, and there's numbers all over their page, and there's letters all over the page, and you go 1A, 2B, 3C, and you connect all the dots. And she would time me. All sorts of little brain teasers like that. And I had homework. I would take some of these tests home and fill them out at home. So she saw me for 2 years, every week for 2 years. And she would say things like, after 6 months, she would say, how do you think your recovery is happening? I said, I don't know. I'm still an invalid. I have no idea how my recovery is happening. She said, you see the test I just gave you? You did that test in 27 seconds. The one I gave you a year and a half ago, you did the same test in 90 seconds. So you don't think you're getting better, but you are getting better. You just don't know it because you can't see it. You can't feel it. So that is what helped me more than anything, is that psychologist saying, here's proof.
Right.
You are getting better. You just don't know it. And I finally started to believe her. And I'd go back to Dr. Rossi, and she'd say, well, how much do you think you have recovered? Give me a percentage of how much you have recovered. Now, the neurologist said, I asked him, how long is it going to take to recover? And he said, well, you'll never make 100% recovery because some of those brain cells that are dead are never coming back. So you'll never make 100% recovery. And I thought to myself at the time, he doesn't know who he's talking to. So Dr. Rossi later asked me, what percentage do you think you've recovered? And of course, my eyes never came back. I said, I think I'm probably 85% now after 18 months of this. So I think I'm 85%. And when I get to 100%, I'm not stopping. So she laughed at that. And she said, you'll be on a roll. And the girlfriend I had at the time wanted to get married. And I told her the psychologist had told me, or the neurologist said, don't make any life-changing decisions for 3 years. Don't sell your house. Don't buy a house. Don't sell your business. Don't make any big decisions for 3 years. So after 3 years, I didn't have the excuse anymore. So we got married. Which I learned later was a mistake.
Quickly, let me ask you though, wasn't there an incident a week before your stroke in a bar? Didn't you have a bar
yeah, the bar fight. Now, this was not a bar fight. The whole thing happened in the parking lot. So we can't claim it was a bar fight.
All right, scratch that.
So my brother and I were out on the town one night in the hippie section of town, which was called the Strip at the time. And there's a bar on the Strip was called the Stein Club. Mm-hmm. And there was a strip joint on the Stein, next to the Stein Club, which was called Cheetah 2. It was a Cheetah Lounge. And we're walking down the street toward the Cheetah Lounge. We were coming in the back way, and we came in the back of the Cheetah parking lot and walked through the parking lot. We went behind a bush and took a pee. We were beer drinkers. Took a pee in the parking lot and then walked through the parking lot toward the front of the Cheetah. And a bouncer at the Cheetah came up and said, you got to pay for parking. I said, we walked up. And he said, but you used the parking lot. Because we peed on the parking lot.
Saw you do it, huh?
So you used the parking lot. So I turned to my brother and I said, this guy is a jerk. And we started walking out. And he tapped my brother on the shoulder. When my brother turned around, he cold cocked and just knocked him down. And when he did that, I went to clinch him. I went to hug him to stop him from punching my brother. And he caught me with an uppercut on the chin and knocked me out.
Oy.
And when I went out, I was in the air and I fell backwards and hit the back of my head on the asphalt.
Ouch.
And I was out cold. And the next thing I remember is him slapping me on the cheek saying, wake up, wake up. And
The bouncer?
the bouncer,
Oh, yeah.
wake up,
You
wake up.
scared him.
So I woke up, and I got up, and my brother was still bleeding from a cut on his face. And we walked out of the parking lot and went into the Stein Club. And he went to the bathroom and washed off the blood. And we drank some more beer. And then he left and went home. And I chatted up the barmaid and went home with her.
Mm-hmm.
And 10 days later is when I got sick,
Got the flu.
got the flu. And I knew that the reason I had the stroke was brain swelling. That was, my brain was swelled up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what did that whole side was brain swelling, because that's where I got hit. Well, that's where I got hit right there, because this side is blind.
Well, I'm wondering why Dr. Rossi met you at the hospital if at the time all she'd said was, well, we're going to check into the hospital and observe you. How did she have the foresight to know that this was going to be bad? She met you at the hospital.
She knew that I was so lethargic that this wasn't the normal flu.
Oh, okay.
And she wanted to be close to the ventilator.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, we're just going to check you into the hospital and watch you overnight. Well, that night I was on the ventilator. So,
And the rest is history.
yeah, the rest is pretty much history, but the priest came over, my parents came over, and it was pretty good. My father was happier when I could move my hand and my arm and move my leg. He was more happier. He had talked to the neurologist before, and the neurologist told him he's young. He's still a young man.
Uh-huh.
He has a good chance of recovering. He was a young man.
How long was it before you were woodworking again? And what was that like?
It took 2 years. I was working for a wealthy client when I got sick, and he had a penthouse at Colony Square, and I was doing cabinets for his penthouse. And I did all white shiny gloss kitchen for him in the penthouse, and he loved it. And he came to visit me in the hospital when I got sick. So it took 2 years to recover, and I still worked for him a little bit, but I couldn't do much.
Mm-hmm. Did you have to relearn all the tools and
the psychologist who was giving me all the brain teaser questions would give me sort of IQ questions too. And she was encouraging because my scores were getting better. And I tried through force of will to make my vision, to get a little more vision. You know, I can look right here and do this right here, and I only see that finger. I don't see that finger.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that finger till now, till it's right in front of that eye.
Uh-huh.
I don't see it. I'm half blind in both eyes. Nothing wrong with my eyes. There's something wrong with my brain. So my vision is cut in half. The field, if your vision is a screen in the back of your head, mine is cut right down the middle.
And still is.
And still is. I can look at the camera and only see half the camera. If I look straight at your nose, I only see half of you. I can compensate for that by getting you all in out of the corner of my eye. But if I look over here, I can't see you at all. If I look at your ear, I can't see your glasses. So it is right down the middle. I mean, if I'm looking at a word on the page, I see half the word. So it was hard to read. But I tried. I was getting better as he was a wealthy client, and he said, you give me a good deal on this kitchen, and I will help you buy a building. So I was working on a kitchen for him, and I said, I got this kitchen almost done. It's about time this guy comes through with his promise to help me buy a building. He was a big real estate guy. He bought skyscrapers. So I said, hey, the kitchen's pretty much done. And he had the architect for the High Museum who designed the new High Museum, Richard Meyer. He had that architect come over and look at his pit house because he wanted the architect to design him a staircase, a marble staircase. He not only had the penthouse, but he bought the condo underneath the penthouse and doubled them up. And then he bought the condo across the hall from him and tripled it up. And then he bought half a condo up there. So he had 3.5 condos all together. And so I said, isn't it about time for you to buy me a building? Or help me buy a building? And he said, okay, find me a deal. And I found him a deal. And the building was $25,000, and it was on Edgewood. It is where Thumbs Up is now.
Okay.
And I brought that, it was a ramshackle building at the time, and the guy who owned it died, and his wife wanted $25,000 for the building. It was in bad shape. And he came over and looked at it, and he said, well, told the real estate agent, how much do you want for it? And the real estate agent said, well, she wants $25,000 for it. And my client reached for his billfold. He reached for his billfold and said, wait a minute. Come down to the office tomorrow afternoon and have a title search done, and we'll close right then, and I'll give you cash right then. So he bought the building for $25,000.
Nice.
And then I started fixing it up. And that's when I got the flu, when I got sick. I was fixing that building up. And I was up in the rafters, knocking the dust off of that building. I had to fix the roof. It leaked. And I had to stretch a tarp over the roof. And that's twice I almost knocked that glass off.
Ninja
I'm
skills.
going for it. So,
you got a virus while doing that.
well, I
possibly.
got a virus while cleaning out that building. Now, this virus was so bad that she sent me right to the hospital and right into intensive care. And she had graduated from Emory Medical School. And she called her professors. And they came over. She said, this is not the normal flu. And they came over and looked at it. And the professors agreed that this is not the normal flu. This is bad. So they called the CDC. And the CDC came over. And they looked at it. And they said, you're right, this is not the normal flu. And this is probably the flu that swept the country in 1813, the Spanish flu. And you caught it from cleaning off the rafters in that old building. The CDC not only had to come up with what it was, but how I got it. Nobody was wearing a mask at the
Right.
time. There was nothing like that.
And there's pigeon shit up there and all kinds of.
So that's what the CD said, that I caught the flu that was the 1918 flu. And
if you get the coronavirus, you can brag about having the Spanish flu and COVID. That'd be great.
I think I didn't get COVID because I had immunity.
Oh, there you go. Even better.
So it looks like I had the Spanish flu, and I was on a respirator, and I was on a respirator for 19 days,
Right.
just like the original old people died
Right.
in our COVID flu. So if it hadn't been for the doctor getting me to the respirator, I had stopped breathing when they was cramming the respirator down my throat. I remember a little bit of Dr. Rossi saying, "Swallow it, swallow it."
Oh,
And they're
actually putting it in.
pushing the hose down my throat. She kept saying, "Swallow it, swallow it." So I wound up on a respirator. And when I woke up and I went to physical terrorism, and I don't get depressed. And I got depressed because I have always said that the secret of success is turning every setback into an advantage. Now, I don't mean cut your losses if you have losses. Take every setback you have and figure out a way to make that setback, you're better off when you're finished with that setback than you were to start with.
Learn from your mistakes.
Learn from your mistakes. Turn it into advantage. Make something good out of it. So when I left the hospital, I was depressed because I couldn't remember anything long enough to be depressed. I couldn't remember anything to be anxious or worried. I couldn't remember anything. But I knew at the time that I caught the flu from smoking and drinking too much. That was the real reason. Not the bar fight, not anything like that. It was just partying too much. And so I knew the only way, I was half blind. I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't add up a column of figures. When I paid for something in the store, I had to trust the change. I couldn't add it up that fast. And I knew that, well, one side wasn't hurt. One side of the brain was hurt bad, but the other side wasn't hurt. So I still had enough wherewithal to know that the only way to turn this stroke into an advantage was to quit smoking and drinking.
Amen.
So that if I quit smoking and drinking and I make a good recovery, I will be a better man than before I had the stroke. So I could recover more than 100%. That guy was wrong. I could recover more than 100%. And that's what I did. I just kept working with that psychologist and kept plugging away. And I had something I called my training as a craftsman helped me recover. Because if you are a craftsman and you are presented with a mountain of work, you do the hardest thing first. You don't wait till the end to do the hardest thing. You do the hardest thing first. So I knew that any of these brain teasers, any of the stuff that the psychologist was giving me that I didn't want to do, I did that first. And I think that made a big, big difference. And
you quit drinking and smoking just...
Yeah, I quit drinking and smoking. That made a difference. And I did the hardest thing first. And I have something I call the Frisbee reason. And when I was in college and going to Georgia State, we played Frisbee all the time. That's what guys did. We played Frisbee. And we would jump up in the air and catch a Frisbee behind our back.
Sure.
That was showing off.
You betcha.
And that's exactly what we would do. The higher you could jump in the air and you could catch your Frisbee behind the back, that was good.
Yeah.
Everybody laughed at that. So
The Frisbee effect.
it was a Frisbee effect because this was undergraduate, so when I got to graduate school, the guys on the campus of RIT, they play Frisbee too. And they played Frisbee where they would hold up their arms like this, tap the Frisbee, and the Frisbee would roll down their arm and roll, and they catch the Frisbee in the hand. You've seen people do that. The Frisbee would roll down their arms and they catch the Frisbee.
Pretty badass.
And I thought, damn, we could have done that too if I had just known it was possible. So I knew what my level of craftsmanship was before the stroke. And I just kept working on it until I got it back. And you know the S tables
Yes.
that I made? Those S tables, I thought, I'd been 2 years, and he bought me the building. And when I was recovering from the building, he says, "You want to sell that building or you want to keep it?" And I said, "I want to keep it," because I couldn't think. And by the time, a year later, I could remember enough to worry. And I said, I think we ought to sell that building. And he sold the building, and my share of the profits was $11,000. So I used that $11,000 to keep my shop going.
Wow.
I'd pay the rent, bought materials, and I would keep it going. I couldn't do anything because I couldn't plan. I couldn't think of something long enough to plan. So somebody would come into the shop and say, "Here is a chair. I have a set of 8 of these chairs. 2 of them were burned up in a fire. I've got the insurance company who's going to replace them. How much would you charge to copy this chair twice?" I had no idea. I said something like $850 each. He said, "Okay, here's a 50% deposit." And when he left, I called another cabinet maker I knew and said, "I got a chair job. Come on over here and tell me what you charge me for making these chairs." And he came over and he said, I can copy that chair for $500 each. And I said, "All right, do it." So I made money that way. I couldn't do the work, but I made money because I knew people who could do the work.
Right.
So with that $11,000, I kept the shop going and doing jobs that I could farm out to somebody else. For 2 years that I was seeing the psychologist. And after that 2 years, I gradually got better and better. If you're working on woodwork, if you make a mistake, it's pretty obvious. You have to go back.
You betcha.
So it's hard to make a mistake. So that taught me, don't make a mistake. I got that going. And I decided, as I got more and more into it, I still had very cheap rent. I got that done, and I decided, well, I'm getting better. I'm getting back. If I could do an S table, if I could do an S table again, I will prove to myself that I am back.
Because your S table was the ultimate example of all your skills, or it was just...
Yeah, it was the art part. It was pure sculpture. It was just a table because it had a glass top. The glass top was the frame of the art.
Right.
It was, if I took the top off and hung it on the wall, it would be pure sculpture. So I said, well, if I can do that S table, I'll be back. But it can't take me 6 months to do the S table. I'd have to do the S table in a record time, and I'll be back. So I bought the mahogany, stacked up I bought the walnut. I did this one out of walnut. I bought the walnut, I stacked it in the shop, and then I said, okay, I'm going to try to do this as quick as I can. And I planed the boards, cut the boards, put them together, stacked them up, glued them all up, ground them all off, and put the first coat of finish on the S table in 1 week. And I thought, I am back.
How many had you made at that time? Did the others only take a week as well?
No.
No. You were ahead of the game then.
Oh, yeah. Others would take a month. The first one I did, it took a month and a half to do that one. I still have that one I did in a week. It's up there.
Mm-hmm.
We'll pull it out before this is over.
I should say, many of your masterpieces are in front of us. The camera doesn't show them at this moment, but we're looking at a lot of
We'll flip them
your
around. We'll flip them around at one time. So that's the one. That's the S table that you should buy.
Oh, what a novel idea. Now, at some point, there was a...
Oh, the bar fight, we covered that.
Yeah, but at some point after your recovery, even if it was many years later, there was a martial arts studio across the street from you.
Oh, yeah. When I turned 45 years old, now, building furniture is a pretty strenuous job. I mean, you got to tote that barge and lift that bale, and when you get it finished, you got to pick it up.
Yep.
So it's fairly strenuous, and I thought, well, I'm pretty active. I turned 45 or 46, and the warranty on my body was over.
It's about when it starts wearing out.
Things were starting to wear out, and I had a bad bunion on my foot, and I have to walk with a limp because the bunion hurt. And I knew that I had to do something to maintain my body as well as I maintained my woodworking machines. I took good care of them. Mm-hmm. They were well-oiled machines, mm-hmm. but I didn't take any care of my body. Mm. So I thought I need some way to pull maintenance on my body. And I walked out of the back door of my shop where the dumpster was and emptied my garbage, and I saw on the top of the hill in the middle of the street some guy dressed in all black Chinese outfit with the Chinese buttons that rope over, mm-hmm. and he was doing what I thought was Tai Chi. I thought, well, Tai Chi, that'd be good. That'd be good for me. And I walked up the hill and I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm doing Qi Kong. And I said, can I learn it? Can I learn Qi Kong? He said, well, you can be a member of the school. They put a Kung Fu school in the warehouse that was behind me. And so I signed up. And I really didn't sign up for doing Kung Fu, which I practiced, But I signed up for Qigong. I said, I'm here for Qigong. I'm here for my health. I'm not here for martial arts. I've had Taekwondo before, and I don't want to cram my hand down somebody's throat, grab their stomach, and pull them inside out. That's not my reason for being here.
So you mean you were there for an exercise, not for a fighting style
I
or
was
a defense style?
I was doing there. I was wanting Qigong because I wanted to keep building furniture till I was in my old age. Mm-hmm. I wanted people to find me dead behind my workbench, and I wanted Qigong to make that possible. And I got a lesson from the headmaster, the grandmaster, especially the grandmaster of Qigong. I got a couple of private lessons from him, and he'd come into Atlanta sometimes and tour the school and make sure everybody was learning right, and then he'd go to another school. He had 3 or 4 schools at the time. His master told him, don't keep it a secret. Don't keep Qigong a secret anymore. At the time, it was only taught to Cantonese people, and it was only taught to one tribe in Canton, which was the Hakka tribe. That was only people who could learn it.
Because it was like a sacred language, or they didn't want the world to know how to do this exercise.
Right. It was. They thought it was invincible, and they don't want other martial arts to find the invincible method. So, but I didn't want Kung Fu. I did practice Kung Fu, but I wanted the Qigong. I practiced the Qigong more than anything else. And he asked me when I came to his hotel room, he came into town, and I went to his hotel room for a private lesson on Qigong. Some people would come to his hotel room for medicine. He was practiced in
herbs and whatever.
Correct.
Yeah.
He made all this potions and elixirs. So he was sitting down when I came in, and I sat down in a chair, and he said, "Why do you want to learn Qigong?" And I said, "Well, I want to learn Qigong so I'll be fucking at 90. And I want to be healthy as long as I can." And he said, "Well, you do Qigong every day. Your wife be very happy." So I took the lesson. I took that lesson. I was sold.
Reeled you in.
I was sold right then.
Do you have to pay to learn Qigong? How does that work?
When the monks had somebody who wanted to learn Qigong, they would say, "You must, if I teach you, you must give me something of value, something that you will miss. And you must promise that you will practice it every day without fail for 100 days straight. If you miss a day, you start counting over. I will teach you Qigong if you make me those 2 promises. You must give me something of value, and you must promise that you will do it 100 days straight." When my master's master was teaching, it was a pig and a couple of roosters. That was their something of value. Nowadays, it's money. The money is determined by the head man. And you're going to have to do it 100 days straight. So it's $200 a month for 3 months. It's $600. You get trained once a week. And after 3 months, that's 90 days. So you've made your 100 almost. So that's what I am told I must charge now. They don't really care too much about the money. They don't want to waste their time. So they want to make sure you're serious about this, or they're not wasting their time teaching you.
How difficult is it to do the routine 100 days in a row? How long did it take you? 100 days?
No. It's easy to miss a day.
Yeah.
So I missed a day. No, I didn't miss a day. What happened was my Sifu now, the teacher that I got to teach me, he taught me, he said the same thing to me. I must pay money, and I must do it 100 days straight. And I made the mistake of saying there's all different Qigongs. One of them is Tensing Qigong, which translates loosely as the shining breath work. And I said, if you teach me Tensing Qigong, I will do it 1,000 days straight. And he said, all right, that's not necessary, but okay. And I got up to, I did the 100 days straight, and I kept going, and I figured I could do it. I got up to 958 days. And the end was in sight. And that night, and he came over that day and he taught me, and I said, it's 9:58. He taught me, and I paid him in 1990. I paid him $25 a lesson, and he would come over 3 or 4 times a week and teach me. I was his only student. He taught me personally. And I would come over, and we taught in the middle of my shop, and I would pay him by the week. And I'd write down how many 25s I owed him, and when it got up to be 150, I'd give him a check for $150. So I went out on a date and took my girlfriend to dinner. We got home for dinner late, and there was a total eclipse of the moon that night. And we stayed out and watched the total eclipse of the moon, and it didn't occur to me that an eclipse of the moon is the sun is on the other side of the earth, so that's midnight. And the total eclipse of the moon was finished after midnight. And I went inside, and I said, oh, it's after midnight. I didn't do Qigong today. I missed. Oh. And she said, no, you didn't. You didn't miss. We'll go back and get in the car, and we'll go to Alabama. And it's before midnight in Alabama, and we can make it before midnight, and you can do Qigong before then.
Down the road.
And I said, you cannot loophole yourself.
That's right.
So I started over. She was worried that I wouldn't keep going. She was worried that if I had to start over, I wouldn't do it. Uh-huh. So I said, well, I have to start over. And I started counting 1, 2, and I started over counting 1,000 days. I call it K1D, like Y2K.
Right.
The grid was going to go dark.
1,000
Y2K.
days. Yeah, yeah.
So I had K1 day, K1D, or 1KD, 1KD, 1,000 days. And it took me a long time to do 1,000 days.
More than the next 1,000 days.
Much more than the next 1,000 days. I missed it 380. And then I missed again at 4 something. And that was turning into years. I promised him 1,000 days, and it turned in, and I hadn't done it in 20 years.
Oh.
So I thought, now, this is serious. If I don't make up my mind to do this 1,000 days, it's been 20 years. So
You don't want to lie to the seafood.
no, you can't lie to the seafood. So I made 1,000 days, finally made it 1,000 days, and that was 26 years after I made him the promise. If you
Wow.
teach me Tensing Qigong, I'll do it 1,000 days. It took 26 years, but I made it 1,000 days. And I called him on the 1,001 days, and I said, I made it, Sifu. I made it 1,000 days. My oath to you is accomplished. And he called me back and he said, well, I appreciate it.
Give
Thanks
you
for the
money back.
info. You know, you are a legend in the school.
Ah.
So
How many years ago was that?
it's written down over there.
July
July
25th?
25th, 2007.
17.
2017.
Oh,
and
boy.
I haven't missed since then, so it's more than 1,000 now.
Wow. How long? Well, first of all, did you learn other methods? Just the breathing exercise, or did you learn all of Qigong?
I learned at the time all he was willing to teach me. And he turned me loose and said, well, you have it. I can't teach you any more than I've already taught you. So keep going. And I kept going. And when you first learn, you promise the 100 days with a Qigong that's only 10 minutes long. Because no one in this life cannot carve out 10 minutes in one day. Cannot set aside 10 minutes. Hell, you take an hour for lunch.
Right.
So you can't no one has the excuse of not being able to carve out 10 minutes. So what he taught me to begin with was 10 minutes long. And so that's what I did that. And of course, it's longer. He did a Qigong that was 25 minutes long. It started out with a Qigong I was doing, but he kept going more than I was doing. So I learned that before he turned me loose. He called it level 1, level 2, level 3. And it goes up, keeps going. But most people, he did 1, 2, and 3. He did level 1, 2, and 3. And so what I am going to teach you is level 1 and a little bit of level 2. And that's enough to create great therapeutic benefit. If you want to go on, then, well, I will teach you level 1. And level 1 is great therapeutic benefit. You'll see it, you'll know it, you'll recognize it as much healthier than you used to be. If you want to learn level 2, you have to go to him. You have to go to my Sifu. You have to go to the head man of Qigong in the nation. No one knows more about Qigong than my Sifu does.
And his name?
Is Sifu Jeff.
Jeff.
No one knows more about it because he learned from his Sifu.
And he wrote a book recently, and I read it.
Yeah, he wrote a book on Qigong for good health. But his Sifu was Sifu Yi. Sifu Yi was told by his master, by his Sifu, do not keep this a secret anymore. Teach anyone who wants to learn. That's the first time it's ever been taught to anybody who wasn't Chinese. So,
because it's just for good health. Why would that be a secret? Why would anybody protect a routine because it gives you better health? It seems strange to me.
Well, there's a history of when it was done. The Grand Master would be a Grand Master of crane style. All the monks in the monastery wear a golden belt, a yellow belt. Only the master of a particular form or style wears a red sash. So it'd be monkey style, it'd be crane style, it'd be cat style, some kind of style. This guy that started our Qigong invented his own style, praying mantis style. So praying mantis is a kung fu style. And the guy was teaching this style, the Grand Master was teaching style to a bunch of novices, a bunch of people who were studying to be monks. And the emperor might say, I need 1,000 soldiers. And so he calls on the monastery to train 1,000 monks. So he would be teaching all these monks praying mantis kung fu, and a lot of them weren't showing up in the morning because they were sick. So he came up with a Qigong that would keep people from being sick. And that's when he came up with Tensing Qigong, the shining Qigong. It was a Qigong that would make your light, your inner light, shine before men. The Tensing Qigong.
But it's a style called praying mantis.
It's Tensing Qigong.
Oh, okay.
Praying mantis is a kung fu.
Oh, okay.
Praying mantis is a fighting style.
Mm.
Praying mantis is a way of fighting. You know, the cat style, they're fighting, it's like a cat. There's tiger. There's lion. There's all kinds of styles.
And Qigong is an exercise of the greater style or an offshoot, or
it is for good health.
it's just for good
It's
general.
It's for general good health.
Okay.
It's for general good health. It's the monks say the Qigong puts the fire in the kung fu.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have good health, you don't have fire in your kung fu.
Core strength, they call it today, I guess.
Yeah, core strength. There's a lot in here. They don't call it core. They call it the dantian. The dantian is between your genitals and your navel. Between the base of your penis and your navel. Right there is the dantian. We call it the small intestines. But they call it the dantian. That's where all your life force is stored. That's where your Qigong is stored. That is actually in Western medicine, that is the furnace that the food is stoked in. That's where you're absorbing the food, is your small intestines. Mm-hmm. That's where the food is going into your bloodstream to bring nourishment to your cells. So it makes a lot of sense that is your Qigong. Yeah. You ask a Chinese, where's the center of your body? He would say, you ask an American, where's the center of your body? He will say, entirely different. Mm-hmm.
So is it about chi, the general idea of life energy, or is it about chakras, or is it identifying it in that area? Is that a specific chakra? Or?
It's all the same thing. They don't have the word chakra.
Mm-hmm.
The Qigong that I teach you will have some chakra in it.
Mm-hmm.
You will see the chakras. I mean, this is a virality exercise. This is an exercise to make your wife happy. This is all about health.
She'll like that.
And if you are down in the back, you're not fucking at 90. If you're hurt in the back, sex is out of the question.
Right.
Of course, you can always put her on top.
That's a different style.
So the Qigong that you want to know, the Qigong that will be in our new religion, has chakras in it. But it's only the one you have to do for 100 days straight. Only has a 10 to 12 minute exercise in it.
Okay.
So the 10 to 12 won't have chakras in it, but it will have something that is unusual.
Is there an important difference between Qigong and Tai Chi?
Yes,
Which is?
they're different religions.
Behind it.
Yeah, they're different religions. It's like Protestants and Catholics.
Are there major differences in the movements and what you're doing and the breathing and all that?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, Tai Chi is also a fighting style. The people who fight with the Tai Chi style, Tai Chi is from Taoism. The Tao is the way. The path is the Tao. So you stay on the Tao in your life. So they teach martial arts like you cannot hit a falling leaf. So they teach to move out of the way of your opponent's
defense.
Yeah, the opponent can't hit you
Right.
because the time his fist gets there, you're gone.
Right.
So, but it's a whole different style. It's a whole different thing.
And Qigong has nothing to do with a fight. It's just an exercise, more or less.
You are correct, sir. You are correct, sir. But it puts the fire in the fight. The Qigong puts the life fire into the fight.
Okay.
It makes you healthy. It makes you horny.
Mm-hmm. Important. For the new religion.
Stay horny, my friend.
All right. Well, let's take it from there next time then. All right.
Thanks for listening.